London stands as one of the wealthiest cities on the planet, boasting an economy valued at more than $500 billion. If this single city were a sovereign nation, it would rank as the 26th largest economy globally, comparable in size to Norway's entire economic output. For nearly 2 centuries, London has served as Europe's premier financial hub, offering some of the continent's highest wages and most prestigious career opportunities. Yet beneath this veneer of prosperity lies a starkly different reality. In 2023, local councils reported that more than 1 in 50 Londoners experienced homelessness, a figure that has surged by over 50% in just 1 decade. This places the United Kingdom at the top of developed nations for homelessness rates. Meanwhile, real wages, what workers actually take home after accounting for inflation, have remained essentially flat for more than 15 years. British workers today earn roughly the same purchasing power they did in 2008, even as housing costs have skyrocketed and the prices of essential goods have climbed steadily upward. The result? An unprecedented exodus of young, skilled talent seeking better opportunities abroad. This economic brain drain represents one of the most visible symptoms of deeper structural problems plaguing the British economy. The numbers tell a sobering story. Each year, more British professionals are packing their bags and relocating to countries offering superior economic prospects. A junior professional in London might earn £40,000 annually, while their counterpart in New York commands salaries exceeding $100,000, more than double the compensation for comparable work. Yet the cost of living in New York typically runs only about 33% higher than London, making the financial calculus overwhelmingly favorable for emigration. This wage differential has triggered a significant outflow of talent, particularly from critical sectors. The National Health Service faces a potential exodus of doctors and nurses driven by inadequate compensation, excessive workload, and deteriorating working conditions. Research conducted in 2015 revealed a troubling pattern. Those leaving the United Kingdom possess significantly higher skill levels than incoming migrants. The study found that increases in net migration over the preceding decade had substantially expanded the pool of low-skilled workers in Britain's economy, effectively replacing departing skilled professionals with less qualified replacements. This substitution effect carries profound economic consequences. Lower-skilled workforces generally produce lower productivity, reduced innovation, and diminished quality of goods and services throughout the economy. For a developed nation seeking to compete in high-value sectors like finance, technology, and professional services, losing skilled workers while gaining low-skilled workers represents a fundamental economic reversal. The primary motivation cited by departing Britons: declining living standards and diminishing economic opportunity at home. Perhaps no single statistic better captures the United Kingdom's economic malaise than this. Real wages have remained essentially frozen since 2008. After adjusting for inflation, the average British worker earns no more today than they did 17 years ago. This represents the longest period of wage stagnation in modern British economic history, unprecedented even during previous recessions and economic downturns. The consequences ripple throughout society. In 2007, the average United Kingdom household was just 8% worse off than its peers in northwestern Europe. By 2022, that gap had expanded to 20%. On current trajectories, the average Slovenian household will surpass its British counterpart in living standards by 2024, with Polish families achieving the same milestone by the decade's end. This burden falls disproportionately on lower income brackets. While the United Kingdom's top earners rank 5th globally for living standards, the average household ranks 12th and the poorest 5% rank 15th. The lowest earning British households now experience living standards 20% weaker than their counterparts in Slovenia. This represents a remarkable reversal for a nation that once led Europe in industrial development and economic prosperity. The stagnation affects everything from consumer spending to business investment, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of weak demand and limited growth that proves extremely difficult to escape. No issue impacts British living standards more directly than housing affordability. The United Kingdom faces a severe shortage of residential properties, with existing homes priced beyond the reach of most first-time buyers. Home ownership now requires either an income far exceeding the national average or substantial financial assistance from family members. The so-called bank of mom and dad phenomenon has become standard practice rather than exception. The roots of this crisis extend back decades. Introduced in the late 1970s, the Right to Buy scheme allowed public housing tenants to keep their homes at substantial discounts. While enabling many working-class families to achieve home ownership, the policy created an unintended consequence: a dramatic shrinkage of social housing stock. Since these homes were not replaced at sufficient rates, the social housing sector has contracted by approximately 25% since the 1970s, even as population has steadily increased. The United Kingdom has consistently built fewer homes than required to meet its growing population's needs, especially compared to other developed countries. Restrictive planning laws, limited government funding for public housing, and prioritization of other economic sectors over residential construction have created a massive supply-demand imbalance. In England alone, there are now 1.4 million fewer households in social housing than in 1980. This shortage has pushed increasing numbers into the private rental sector, where rising demand inevitably drives up rents. Rental costs have disproportionately affected those on lower incomes, who find fewer affordable options and must compete intensely on price. Housing supply issues exist across Western Europe, but the United Kingdom's situation has become particularly acute. The cumulative effect manifests in rising homelessness, overcrowding in both private and social housing, and more than doubled numbers of households in temporary accommodation between 2010 and 2023, from 48,000 to 112,000, the highest figure since records began. The housing crisis has created a stark generational divide in wealth accumulation. A significant portion of older Britons own second homes, while young adults today are far less likely to own even a single property and far more likely to rent throughout their working lives. This shift reflects broader economic trends where stagnant wages contrast sharply with soaring asset values, exacerbating wealth disparities across generations. Those born in the 1980s have generally earned less by their early 30s compared to previous generations. A complete reversal of the historical expectation that each generation would surpass its parents' economic outcomes. Slower economic growth means fewer opportunities for career advancement, particularly during the critical early career stages when professionals typically see rapid wage increases and skill development. Without the ability to purchase property, young professionals miss out on the wealth-building mechanism that previous generations utilized to accumulate assets and financial security. Property ownership historically served as both shelter and investment, with rising home values providing equity that could be leveraged for business ventures, education, or retirement. Today's young workers lack this pathway to wealth accumulation, instead directing substantial portions of income toward rent, payments that build equity for landlords rather than themselves. This economic reality increasingly drives ambitious young Britons to consider emigration. Countries like the United States, Australia, and New Zealand offer more favorable ratios between wages and housing costs, making property ownership achievable within reasonable timeframes. The combination of unaffordable housing, stagnant wages, and limited career advancement creates a compelling case for seeking opportunities elsewhere, particularly for the skilled workers the United Kingdom economy most needs to retain. Productivity, the efficiency with which a nation converts labor and capital inputs into goods and services, represents the fundamental driver of long-term economic growth and rising living standards. Since the financial crisis of 2008, the United Kingdom has experienced a dramatic productivity slowdown that explains much of its economic stagnation. Before the crisis, productivity grew at approximately 2% annually, a rate consistent with historical trends and comparable to other developed economies. After 2008, this growth nearly flatlined. The contrast is stark. While peer nations eventually recovered productivity growth rates, the United Kingdom has failed to return to its pre-crisis trajectory. Investment patterns reveal the underlying cause. Since 2005, United Kingdom companies have invested 20% less than counterparts in the United States, France, and Germany, placing Britain in the bottom 10% of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. This chronic underinvestment has resulted in outdated technology and equipment, reduced innovation, and insufficient skill development across both industrial and service sectors. The consequences manifest throughout the economy. Outdated equipment means workers cannot produce as efficiently as those in countries with modern capital stock. Insufficient innovation means British companies compete less effectively in high-value sectors. Inadequate skill development means the workforce cannot adapt to changing technological demands. Combined, these factors create an economy operating below its potential, generating lower output per worker and thus unable to support rising wages without fueling inflation. The productivity puzzle also explains why increased immigration has not translated into proportional economic growth. Adding workers without corresponding capital investment simply spreads existing capital more thinly across a larger workforce, potentially reducing productivity per worker rather than enhancing it. Breaking this cycle requires sustained increases in business investment, something the uncertain economic and political environment has discouraged in recent years. The National Health Service, established in 1948 as a publicly funded healthcare system free at point of access, has become a defining institution of British life. Yet in recent decades, costs have spiraled even as quality of care has declined, a paradox that reveals fundamental challenges in the United Kingdom's public service model. When first introduced, Britain's population was substantially smaller and younger, requiring less healthcare intervention. Today's aging population demands vastly more medical care and treatment. Despite taxes rising to record levels in the last decade, public services like the NHS struggle more than ever. The number of people waiting for NHS consultant treatment has more than doubled from 3 million to 7.4 million in the 9 years after 2014. If you're enjoying this analysis of the United Kingdom's economic challenges and want to stay informed about similar economic topics, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. We have many more videos exploring global economic trends coming soon. Data consistently shows that NHS patients treated for major health issues like heart disease, strokes, or cancer experience lower survival rates compared to those receiving treatment in most other developed nations. In 2014, the United Kingdom had below average survival rates for the deadliest cancers, including the lowest rates among comparable nations for colon and pancreatic cancers. Many assume this reflects chronic underfunding, and while partly true, the reality is more complex. The NHS has seen significant funding increases since 2019, with 2023 funding running 11% higher in real terms than 4 years prior. Senior doctor numbers rose 9% with 8% more nurses and health visitors, even after adjusting for high staff sickness absences. The problem? Health inflation. An aging population requires more medical care. New medical technologies and treatments carry substantial costs. Drug prices continue rising. Patients expect higher quality care. Staff demand higher wages to keep pace with inflation. These rising expenses make it difficult for the NHS to improve services and outcomes even with increased resources. Funding growth covers maintenance costs rather than investing in long-term capacity, leaving little money for the infrastructure improvements needed to serve an aging population effectively. NHS underinvestment reflects a broader pattern of inadequate infrastructure spending across the United Kingdom. Transportation, utilities, and public services all suffer from insufficient funding, leading to inefficiencies and reduced service quality. New projects face significantly higher costs and longer timelines than in peer nations, creating a vicious cycle where infrastructure gaps widen even as investment increases. HS2 provides the perfect case study. This proposed high-speed rail network aimed to better connect northern and southern England. First conceived in 2009, construction finally began in 2020, an 11-year gap during which projected costs ballooned from £37 billion to over £100 billion. The project was ultimately abandoned in 2023, leaving enormous sunk costs with no corresponding infrastructure benefit. This failure illustrates multiple systemic problems. Planning processes extend for years, accumulating costs without producing results. Political uncertainty creates stop-start funding cycles that inflate expenses. Regulatory complexity adds layers of expense compared to continental European projects. Skills shortages in construction and engineering drive up labor costs. Combined, these factors make infrastructure development prohibitively expensive and slow. The infrastructure deficit has real economic consequences. Outdated transportation networks constrain business efficiency and limit labor mobility. Aging utilities require costly maintenance rather than supporting growth. Poor digital infrastructure handicaps technology sector development. Each infrastructure gap represents foregone economic activity and diminished competitiveness relative to nations investing more effectively in foundational systems. Remove London's economic output and population from United Kingdom statistics, and British living standards would drop 14%, enough to make the remaining United Kingdom perform worse economically than Mississippi, the lowest-ranking United States state in per capita economic performance. This calculation reveals the extraordinary degree to which London's success masks struggles elsewhere in the country. The 1990s saw Britain shift decisively toward a service-based economic model, concentrating high-value employment in financial services and professional sectors located primarily in London and the South East. While this transition generated prosperity for those regions, it resulted in widespread job losses in areas dependent on heavy industry and manufacturing, sectors that historically provided stable, well-paid employment in regions distant from London. This geographic concentration of economic opportunity creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Talented young people migrate to London seeking high-value employment, draining other regions of human capital. Investment flows to London, where markets and opportunities concentrate. Regional economies struggle with aging populations, declining services, and limited growth prospects. The gap widens over time, creating two increasingly separate economic realities within one nation. Addressing this divide requires more than infrastructure investment or regional development funds. It demands a fundamental rebalancing of economic opportunity and a reversal of decades-long trends that have concentrated prosperity in specific geographic areas while leaving others behind. The United Kingdom's economic crisis cannot be attributed to any single policy failure or external shock. Instead, it reflects interconnected challenges: chronic underinvestment in housing and infrastructure, productivity, stagnation driven by insufficient business investment, demographic pressures on public services, and regional inequalities that concentrate opportunity in limited geographic areas. The financial crisis of 2008 exposed these underlying weaknesses, revealing an over-reliance on financial services and inadequate investment in other vital sectors. Focus on immediate economic gains during the prosperity of the 1990s came at the expense of long-term planning and investment. Privatization, meant to bring capital for infrastructure upgrades, often led to underinvestment as private companies prioritized profit maximization over long-term improvements. The cumulative effect has been a gradual erosion of the foundation supporting living standards and economic growth. Today's brain drain, skilled workers seeking better opportunities abroad, represents both symptom and cause of deeper problems. As talented professionals leave, the remaining economy becomes less productive and innovative, making conditions worse for those who stay. Breaking this cycle requires confronting difficult trade-offs, making sustained investments with long payback periods, and rebuilding institutional capacity to deliver infrastructure and services effectively. Without such changes, the exodus of talent will likely continue, and the United Kingdom's relative economic decline will persist for years to come.